Click subscribe to get latest news and don't forget to press the bell icon.
In less than a week, the mainstream media's narrative has already started to change with regard to the political violence in Charlottesville. A large part of that is due to President Trump's renewed offensive against far-left violence. This week, the New York Times admitted that very fine people attended the rally to preserve the statue of General Robert T. Lee. Good people can go to Charlottesville, the Times quoted Michelle Piercy of Kansas as saying. She drove all night with a conservative group that opposed the planned removal of a statue of the Confederate General Robert T. Lee. The Times also had to write that conservatives like Miss Piercy, who have grown only more emboldened after Charlottesville, believe that the political and media elite hold them and Mr. Trump to a harsh double standard that demands they answer for the sins of a radical, racist fringe. They largely accept Mr. Trump's contention that these same forces are using Charlottesville as an excuse to undermine his presidency, and by extension, their vote. In sum, the Times and other mainstream media outlets have once again failed to understand the opinions of most ordinary Americans. When President Trump denounced the violence on both sides and characterized Antifa and Black Lives Matter as the out-left, millions of Americans nodded their heads in agreement. A recent survey poll conducted by The Economist and YouGov has found that over 50% of Americans support President Trump's support for the continued presence of Confederate monuments in the United States. Everyday Americans also know full well that Antifa and BLM are not really fighting Nazis. What they're doing is engaging in a far-left takeover of American institutions and history. On Wednesday evening, vandals on Chicago's South Side destroyed a 90-year-old bust of Abraham Lincoln, the Republican president who kept the Union intact and presided over the abolition of slavery. Again, President Trump is correct in noting that letting far-left radicals tear down Confederate statues without remorse will only lead to other historical figures being targeted. Currently, monuments targeted by leftists include those of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Mount Rushmore. These are the people the mainstream media support. Never forget that. So far, increasing scrutiny of the events in Charlottesville shows that the event was far more nuanced than the reports coming out of the mainstream media. Yes, National Socialists and white supremacists were at the Unite the Right rally, but they were a minority. Also, on the other side, Antifa and BLM thugs likely played a role in starting all of the violence by throwing bottles and bricks and by using acid-laced pepper spray to target right-wing figures. The out-left has demanded that Trump and his supporters mourn the death of Heather Heyer while simultaneously laughing at Unite the Right organizers and demonstrators who were attacked and injured. If the mainstream media is genuinely serious about protecting America's republic and keeping street violence out of the public square, then they should stop overlooking Antifa and BLM and stop cheering violence against any movement who is peaceably exercising their free speech rights granted to every American under the First Amendment. As of today, the media is cheering a targeted campaign against any group and or individual remotely associated with Unite the Right. That targeting includes people like Michelle Piercy of Kansas, who simply don't want to see American history expunged from society.